Sir, I think you need to see this. Kareem Al-Masri looked up from his laptop. His security manager stood frozen at the door, holding a remote in one hand and looking pale. Is it an intruder? Kareem asked. The man shook his head. No, sir. It's the nanny. Kareem narrowed his eyes. What about her? She's doing something with your daughter. On camera. You said you wanted everything recorded. Every room, every minute. Kareem leaned back slowly in his leather chair. Show me. What he saw on the screen made him drop his coffee and sit in stunned silence. Kareem Al-Masri was a 41-year-old oil executive based in Abu Dhabi, a man known for sharp suits, sharper deals, and a fortress of a home overlooking the coastline. His wealth was whispered about across the business circles of the Middle East. But behind closed doors, Kareem's world wasn't as polished as his reputation. His only daughter, 7-year-old Amira, had been diagnosed with autism at age 3. Beautiful, intelligent, and nonverbal, Amira's condition had become a silent battleground in Kareem's life, a war between guilt and love, ambition and fatherhood. Since his wife's death in a car crash 2 years ago, the burden of raising Amira had fallen solely on his shoulders, and he was failing. Every nanny he hired quit within weeks. She doesn't respond. She screams at night. She won't let anyone touch her. Kareem tried therapy, specialized schools, even holistic healers. Nothing worked. Until one desperate evening, a friend recommended someone different. Her name's Grace, his friend said. She's from Nairobi. She's not a certified therapist, but the kids love her, especially kids like Amira. Kareem raised an eyebrow. She's not certified. She's experienced, the friend replied. There's a difference. You want a degree or a breakthrough. A week later, Grace arrived. She was tall, in her early 40s, with dark skin that glowed in the sun and braided hair wrapped neatly under a scarf. Her eyes were calm, wise, like she had weathered 1,000 storms and was still standing. She didn't flinch when Amira screamed. She didn't panic when Amira threw her cereal bowl. She simply sat, quietly, humming something soft, something old. Amira stared at her for a moment, and stopped crying. Kareem saw it, a flicker of calm in his daughter. The first in months. Are you sure you can handle this? He asked. Grace smiled. I don't handle children. I walk with them, side by side. He hired her that day. The first few weeks were quiet. Grace kept to herself. She didn't ask questions. She followed Kareem's rules. No touching personal items. No friends visiting. Always report if Amira had any episodes. Kareem was cautious. Not because she was African, but because he had trusted too easily before. So he had cameras installed in every common area. Not for spying, he told himself, but for safety. He never watched the footage. Not until that moment in his office, weeks later, when his security manager walked in looking shaken. But before that, something strange began to happen. Amira changed. She stopped flinching when someone entered her room. She started eating full meals. She even began humming. Kareem overheard it one night from his study. A soft, lilting tune echoing down the hall. And then, a sound he hadn't heard in over a year. Laughter. Pure. Childlike. Free. He stood frozen, coffee cup in hand. Grace was doing something no doctor, no specialist, no caregiver had managed to do. She was reaching Amira. One evening, after returning home late, Kareem walked past the nursery and paused. The door was slightly open. Inside, Grace sat cross-legged on the floor, her back to the camera, facing Amira. She held something in her hands, small and metallic. A spoon. A harmonica. Soft notes drifted through the room like a lullaby from another life. And Amira, she was clapping, laughing. Kareem felt something tighten in his throat. It was beautiful. But why hadn't Grace told him? The next day, his assistant reminded him. Sir, Your cousin's coming to visit tomorrow. Should I move Grace and the child to the back wing? Kareem frowned. Why? The assistant hesitated. Your cousin doesn't like the help getting too comfortable. Kareem didn't answer, but that night he watched the footage. Not just the nursery, all of it. The playroom, the living room, the backyard, and what he saw shocked him. Grace wasn't just caring for Amira. She was teaching her through music, rhythm, repetition. She would tap her fingers 3 times, and Amira would tap back. She would point to flashcards, wait in silence, and somehow, Amira would nod. It wasn't speech, but it was connection. Grace had broken through, and Kareem had no idea how. But then, the moment came. Footage from 2 nights earlier. Grace thought no one was watching. She sat on the edge of the couch, Amira asleep in her lap, and she began whispering. Not in English, not in Arabic, but in her mother tongue, Swahili. Kareem couldn't understand the words, but her voice was full of pain and love. And then, she said one sentence in English. You remind me of her, little one. I couldn't save her, but maybe I can save you. Kareem sat upright. Who was she talking about? The next clip chilled him to the bone. It was from the hallway camera, just past midnight. Grace was on the phone, whispering. No, I haven't told him yet. He doesn't know about my past, about why I'm really here. Kareem hit pause. The screen froze on Grace's face. He leaned back in his chair, stunned. Why I'm really here. His mind raced. Who was this woman he'd let into his home? What secret was she hiding? And what did she mean? I couldn't save her. The next morning, Kareem confronts Grace about what he saw on the footage, but she doesn't deny it. Instead, she tells him a story from her past, one that not only explains why she came to work for him, but reveals a heartbreaking loss that binds her fate to Amira's, more than he ever imagined. The morning air in Abu Dhabi carried a strange stillness. Kareem Al-Masri stood by the living room window, watching the sun stretch across the horizon, but his mind was racing. The footage from the night before haunted him. He doesn't know about my past, about why I'm really here. I couldn't save her, but maybe I can save you. The nanny he'd trusted with his daughter, Grace, was hiding something deeper than just a painful memory. And today, he needed answers. He waited until Amira had fallen asleep before calling Grace into his study. She entered calmly, her posture straight, hands folded gently in front of her. You asked to see me, sir? Kareem nodded toward the chair. Sit. She obeyed, silent. He slid the laptop toward her and pressed play. The video clip, the hallway, the whisper, her voice saying, he doesn't know about my past. He hit pause. Silence. Grace stared at the screen without blinking. I don't want excuses, Kareem said. I want the truth. Who were you talking to? What are you hiding from me? She looked down at her hands, and for the first time since she arrived, her voice trembled. I knew this would come. She took a deep breath. I had a daughter, Grace said softly. Her name was Zuri. She was 6 when she died. Kareem's breath caught in his throat. How? He asked quietly. Grace stared past him, into a memory. We lived in Nairobi. I worked at a private school as a classroom assistant. Zuri was bright, curious. She had this way of watching people, like she could see inside them. But she struggled too. She didn't speak until she was almost 5. Loud sounds made her scream. She would line her toys in perfect rows and cry if anyone touched them. Kareem's eyes widened. She was autistic. Grace nodded. They never diagnosed her properly. They said she was slow, that she needed to be disciplined harder. Her voice cracked. One day, she wandered off. The school was understaffed. I thought she was with a teacher. By the time I found her, her eyes brimmed with tears. She had climbed into the water tank near the edge of the playground. She couldn't swim. Kareem was silent. Grace continued, her voice raw. They blamed me, fired me. No investigation, no warning. I buried her with nothing but shame and questions. If I'd known more, if I'd understood her needs. She wiped her face. I came here not just for work. I came to redeem myself, to make peace with the mother I failed to be. Kareem leaned back in his chair, stunned. Everything made sense now. The harmonica lullabies, the humming, the soft patience. Grace wasn't just helping Amira. She was healing herself. But one thing still gnawed at him. That call, he said. Who were you speaking to? Grace hesitated. My sister. Back in Nairobi. She's been warning me to be careful, to tell you everything. Why? She glanced up, eyes shining. Because someone else knows who I am. And they don't want me here. That evening, as Kareem wrestled with his thoughts, his cousin Tariq arrived. A tall man in a pristine dishdasha and expensive cologne. Tariq smiled broadly as he entered the villa. Still not married, Kareem, he joked. Running a business empire and a child, all by yourself? Kareem forced a polite smile. She's doing well now. Tariq glanced around. Still got that African woman caring for her? Yes. Her name is Grace. Tariq's face twisted. You trust her? You know those people will say anything to get a job. They're poor, desperate. Kareem's jaw clenched. She's not just those people. She's the only one Amira has responded to in over a year. Tariq scoffed. Be careful. The help always know how to play the part. Until they don't. Kareem ended the conversation there. But something in his cousin's tone stuck with him. Almost like a warning or a threat. That night, Grace found a note on her bed. No envelope. No name. Just a few cold words, scrawled in harsh ink. We know who you are. One wrong step, and you're out. Grace read it twice, then locked her door. The next day, Kareem checked the camera footage again. This time, not to spy, but to protect. And what he saw made his blood run cold. A clip from earlier that morning. The camera caught Tariq walking past Grace's door, pausing, then slipping a small piece of paper under it. It was him, his own cousin. Kareem called him immediately. You left something at my house. Tariq paused. What? A note. Threatening Grace. There was silence. Then laughter. You're really falling for her act, aren't you? Kareem's voice was ice. If you ever threaten someone under my roof again, family or not, you'll find the door permanently closed. He hung up. But that night, everything changed. Grace rushed into the study, panic in her eyes. It's Amira. She's not in her room. Kareem jumped up. What do you mean? I went to get her medicine. I came back. Her door was open. They searched every room, every hall, the backyard, the pool area. Nothing. Then Kareem remembered the garage door. He sprinted downstairs. It was cracked open, and the side gate, wide open. Panic gripped him. He looked at Grace, breathless. Call security. Now. But as he stepped into the street, something caught his eye. Tiny footprints in the dust, leading toward the construction site next door. As Kareem and Grace search the construction site in desperation, they hear a faint sound, a familiar tune being hummed through the dust and wind. And then, a scream. What they find hidden beneath the rubble will not only test Grace's instincts, but uncover a truth about Amira that even Kareem never knew. The dusty wind howled through the skeleton of the half-built villa next door. Kareem's expensive shoes crunched across broken tiles and exposed rebar. He didn't care. His lungs were burning, his shirt soaked in sweat, and all he could hear was the single, soul-shattering question echoing in his mind. Where is Amira? Behind him, Grace swept her flashlight frantically across piles of rubble and rusted scaffolding. She wouldn't come here alone, Kareem gasped. She's terrified of loud noises, of open spaces. Grace stopped suddenly. Hush. Kareem froze. And then they heard it. Soft, almost inaudible over the wind. Hum. Hum. Hum hum hum. Kareem's heart lurched. It was that melody again. The one Grace always hummed when Amira was scared. But this time, Amira was humming it. Somewhere inside that cold, half-built house. They ran toward the sound. Down a narrow corridor, into a stairwell leading to the basement. The flashlight flickered. The air grew heavy. And then, a scream. High-pitched, sharp, then silence. Amira! Kareem shouted, his voice cracking. They burst through the basement door, nearly slipping on concrete dust. And there she was. Amira, huddled beneath a makeshift plastic tarp, rocking slowly, eyes wide. Her arms wrapped around a metal pipe for comfort. Kareem dropped to his knees. Sweetheart, don't move. I'm here. But she didn't respond to his voice. Her eyes were fixed on Grace. Grace knelt down and started humming again. Slow, gentle. Amira reached out and touched Grace's cheek, then collapsed into her arms. Kareem watched, stunned. She came here, looking for you, Grace whispered. She followed the melody. Back inside the house, doctors checked Amira. No injuries, just frightened and dehydrated. But something had changed. She clung to Grace's side like a shadow. She wouldn't eat unless Grace fed her. Wouldn't sleep unless Grace was beside her. Kareem should have been relieved, grateful. Instead, he felt something deeper. Conflicted, protective, curious. Why did his daughter, his blood, trust this woman more than him? That night, he watched the camera footage again. This time, not to investigate, but to understand. What was Grace doing differently? What had built this bridge between her and his daughter? And that's when he noticed something strange. Footage from earlier in the week. Monday morning. The living room. Grace and Amira were seated across from each other on the floor. Grace clapped 3 times. Amira responded with 2 claps. Grace pointed to a card. Son. Amira touched the edge of the card and whispered something, barely audible. Kareem leaned in, replaying the clip, and then he heard it. Sue. His eyes widened. It was speech. Amira had spoken, even if just a sound. But why hadn't Grace told him? The next morning, Kareem confronted her. You knew she spoke. Why didn't you say anything? Grace looked up from where she was braiding Amira's hair. Because it wasn't my moment to claim, she said gently. It was hers. Kareem was stunned. But I'm her father. I deserve to know. And I respect that, Grace said. But this child doesn't respond to commands. She responds to trust. She was speaking in the only way she knew how. Quietly, safely, with no pressure to perform. Kareem sat down, his chest heavy. Do you think she'll speak again? Grace smiled. She already is. Later that day, while organizing the camera archives, Kareem came across an unexpected folder on the home system. Private audio logs. 03. He clicked. Inside were short audio clips. One labeled simply, Voice Test, GJ. He hit play. It was Grace's voice. Soft, like she was talking to herself. Day 18. Amira held my hand. Briefly. She didn't pull away. She hummed back. I think she's starting to associate certain tones with safety. Kareem realized these were her personal progress logs. Unprompted, unpaid, just done out of love. He clicked another. Day 25. We tried the harmonica again. She tapped her foot this time. Rhythm response. Eye contact lasted 3 seconds longer. And another. Day 32. She whispered a consonant. S. Only once. But it counts. Everything counts. Kareem leaned back, overwhelmed. This woman wasn't just a nanny. She was documenting his daughter's growth with the care of a scientist and the heart of a mother. But then, he opened the final clip. Day 37. She asked for me. Not with words. But she looked around. Crawled room to room. When she found me, she curled into my lap. I can't explain it. It felt like forgiveness. Like Zuri was telling me, "You did it right this time." Tears welled in Kareem's eyes. This wasn't just about employment. This was healing. For Grace. For Amira. Maybe even for himself. But just as peace settled over the household, a new storm loomed. That afternoon, 2 uniformed men showed up at the front gate. Kareem answered himself. "Can I help you?" One of them, a man in a Navy uniform with an Emirati seal, spoke in a clipped tone. "We're here to speak with a Ms. Grace Wanjiru. She is currently under investigation for visa fraud and illegal employment in a domestic role." Kareem's blood ran cold. "What? That's impossible. I hired her legally. She came in on a visitor's pass. Her work permit was never filed. We have orders to detain her." Inside the house, Grace stood frozen with Amira at her side, who instantly began to cry. Kareem stepped between the officers and his daughter's nanny. "She's not going anywhere." The officer raised a brow. "Sir, obstruction of an immigration order is a federal offense." Kareem held up his phone. "I'll make some calls." As Kareem scrambles to protect Grace from deportation, a stunning revelation surfaces. Grace never applied for the permit, because someone in the system intentionally blocked it. And when Kareem tracks down the source, he comes face to face with a betrayal that could cost him everything, even custody of his own daughter. Would you like me to continue with part 4? Kareem stood at the gate, his jaw clenched. 2 immigration officers. A clipboard. A detention order with Grace's full name printed across the top in bold black ink. Inside the house, Amira was sobbing uncontrollably, clinging to Grace as if her life depended on it. "Sir, if she doesn't comply, we will remove her by force," one officer said. Kareem stepped forward. "You do that in front of my daughter, and I swear it'll be the last thing you do in uniform." There was a pause. The lead officer glanced at Kareem's watch, his shoes, his villa, then said, "You have 48 hours to present legal work documentation. Otherwise, we return." With backup. And just like that, they left. Inside, Grace tried to console Amira. But the girl was inconsolable. Her cries weren't just tears, they were panic. The kind that made your limbs flail and your throat tighten. Kareem watched helplessly. He had never seen her like this. Grace whispered, rocked, sang, but nothing worked. Until Grace gently placed Amira's hand on her chest. And slowly, she breathed. Rhythmic, measured. Amira, as if guided by some invisible rope, mirrored the motion. The sobs softened. The flailing stopped. Kareem watched in awe. It was as if Grace had reached inside Amira's chaos and pulled her back to shore. Once Amira fell asleep, Kareem pulled Grace into his office. "Why didn't you tell me about the visa?" he demanded. Grace was silent. "I hired you legally. We filed the paperwork through an agency." She nodded. "I know. But the paperwork was never processed." "How's that possible?" I followed up. Twice. They kept saying it was pending. Then someone stopped answering my emails, my calls. "Which agency?" "Lighthouse Domestic Services." Kareem narrowed his eyes. He remembered something. Tariq. The next morning, Kareem paid Lighthouse Domestic Services a personal visit. The receptionist barely made eye contact. "We don't handle legal issues. You'll need to speak with management," she said curtly. "I am management," Kareem replied coldly. And I'm not leaving until someone tells me how my nanny's work permit mysteriously vanished from your system. Eventually, a manager came out. Nervous. Sweating. Kareem Al-Masri, the man said. This is unexpected. Kareem crossed his arms. Where's her file? The manager hesitated, then walked into a back room. Minutes later, he returned with an empty folder. Nothing inside, he said. Looks like it was misfiled. Kareem stepped forward. I have surveillance footage showing her employment, bank transfers, emails from your agency confirming receipt of documents. The manager stammered. Then, there must have been an internal error. Kareem's eyes narrowed. No, someone tampered with this. Later that evening, Kareem made a call to a contact in government affairs. What can you tell me about Lighthouse Domestic Services? He asked. A pause. They're clean on paper, the voice said. But rumor is they have arrangements. High-paying clients. Special favors. A few people get to pull strings. Kareem leaned forward. Like who? The voice paused again. You really want to know? Yes. The reply came sharp. Your cousin, Tariq Al-Masri. Kareem nearly dropped the phone. It made sense. Tariq's disdain. The note slipped under Grace's door. His insistence that people like her couldn't be trusted. Tariq had connections. He was on the board of multiple agencies. Quiet. Powerful. He had blocked Grace's paperwork intentionally. Why? Was it racism? Control? Or something deeper? Kareem didn't wait. That night, he confronted him. Tariq was sipping tea on his private terrace. When Kareem showed up, unannounced and furious, Tariq just smirked. What a surprise. To what do I owe the pleasure? You sabotaged Grace's work permit. Tariq laughed. Is that what she told you? She's good. I'll give her that. I have proof. Emails. Deleted files. A government contact traced it all to you. Tariq's face dropped. Then he said, coldly, she doesn't belong here, Kareem. She's using your daughter's condition to manipulate her way into your life. Into your money. Kareem's voice was low, but dangerous. She's the only reason my daughter is alive right now. Tariq stood up. She's a liability. You don't know where she comes from. You don't know what she's done. Kareem stepped closer. No, but I know what you've done. Silence. I've already contacted my lawyers. If you don't withdraw your interference by tomorrow, I will expose you. Publicly. And I'll burn every bridge your name sits on. Tariq's lips curled. You'd do that? For a nanny. Kareem nodded. For my daughter. That night, Grace sat with Amira in the nursery. She didn't speak, just held her, rocked her, watched the rise and fall of her chest. And then Amira did something she hadn't done before. She reached up and touched Grace's lips, then her own. Grace stared, breathless. Mama, Amira whispered. The word was so faint, it could have been a breeze. But it was real. And Grace broke into tears. The next morning, Kareem received word. Tariq had withdrawn all challenges. Lighthouse Domestic Services miraculously located the missing paperwork. Grace's legal work permit was processed in less than 12 hours. But something else arrived too. A package. No name. Inside, a printed photo. Grace. On a street in Nairobi. With a man. On the back, scribbled in ink. You really think she told you everything? As Grace's past resurfaces through the mysterious photo, Kareem is forced to confront the possibility that there's more to her story than even she has shared. When he discovers the identity of the man in the photo, and the truth of how Grace left Nairobi, everything he thought he knew is shattered. The photo sat on Kareem's desk like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Grace, standing on a dusty Nairobi street, smiling, holding hands with a man. His face was half-turned, but Kareem could see the uniform. Dark blue, brass badge, Kenyan police, and scrawled on the back in jagged pen, "You really think she told you everything?" Kareem's mind raced. Who was he? A friend? A lover? Or something more dangerous? Grace had never mentioned a man. Not once. Only Zuri, the daughter she lost. Only the job she'd fled. That night, Kareem couldn't sleep. Grace had been part of their home for nearly 2 months. She had saved his daughter's life. He'd stood up to family, risked reputation, even faced down federal officers for her. But now this. Could everything have been a performance? Or worse, manipulation? He stared down at the photo again and made a call. The next day, his investigator called back. "I ran the badge in the photo. The man's name is Detective Elijah McOry, Nairobi Special Crimes Unit." Kareem's heart dropped. Special crimes. Yes, corruption, internal affairs. But here's the thing. The investigator paused. He filed a report 2 years ago about a woman named Grace Wanjiru. Kareem sat up straight. What did it say? Alleged witness to a child exploitation ring operating through a private school. He claimed she had evidence, photographs, names, payment records. But the report was shut down. Grace disappeared before she could testify. Kareem was stunned. Was she involved? No. According to McCory's report, she was the whistleblower. Kareem's pulse pounded in his ears. She wasn't running from guilt. She was running from people who wanted her silenced. He rushed home. Grace was in the kitchen, gently peeling an orange for Amira, who was now speaking one-word phrases like juice, light, and grace. Kareem interrupted quietly. "I need to speak with you." Grace followed him into the study, her face calm but watchful. He handed her the photo. Silence. Her hands shook slightly. "I didn't want you to find this," she said softly. "Who is he?" "Detective McOry. He protected me." Kareem said nothing. Grace finally sat down and exhaled, deep and heavy. And then she told him everything. 2 years earlier, she worked as an assistant at a well-funded private academy in Nairobi. From the outside, it was pristine. Polished floors, international curriculum, powerful alumni. But behind the doors, something sinister thrived. Grace noticed strange patterns. Children pulled into closed offices. Payments made off the books. A janitor who vanished after asking too many questions. Then one day, she accidentally saw a ledger. Names, ages, dollar amounts. She copied the pages and took them straight to the police. Detective McOry believed her. He filed a case. And 3 days later, her home was broken into. "They didn't take anything," she said. "They just let me know they were watching." So she fled. Quietly. Left the case behind. Left the city. Left Zuri's grave. "I thought I could outrun it," she whispered. "But you can't outrun truth." Kareem was speechless. She wasn't just a nanny. She was a survivor. A truth teller. A mother still healing. But just as they were beginning to find peace again, a phone rang. Grace picked up. Her eyes went wide. "It's McOry." Kareem turned to her. She put it on speaker. "Grace, you need to listen to me. Someone's leaked your location. They know you're in Abu Dhabi." "What do I do?" Grace asked, her voice suddenly trembling. "Get out of the city. Tonight if you can. I've reopened your file. The names you gave me. One of them just resurfaced." "Who?" Silence. Then, "Tariq Al-Masri." Kareem felt the blood drain from his face. "No," he whispered. "Yes," McOry said. "He was on the donor list. Same school. Same slush account. We think he's part of the same ring." And if he knows you've reappeared. The line cut out. Kareem turned to Grace, stunned. My cousin helped fund that school? Grace nodded, eyes full of regret. He was on the board. I never saw him in person, but I saw his name on the ledger. Everything made sense. Tariq's efforts to get rid of Grace, the sabotaged permit, the veiled threats. He wasn't just a bigot. He was protecting himself. Kareem stood up. You're not leaving. Not without protection. Grace looked up, startled. It's not safe here anymore. I have resources, Kareem said. Connections. But we're not running. He stared at the photo again. He's going to answer for this. The next morning, Kareem filed an official complaint with the Ministry of Interior. He submitted Grace's testimony. The files from Macquarie, the old ledger pages Grace still carried, and surveillance footage of Tariq threatening Grace. Then he made one more call to an investigative journalist in Dubai. This story, Kareem said, needs to be told. By nightfall, the story was breaking across the Gulf. Human trafficking ring exposed at International Academy. Donors linked to UAE elite. Anonymous whistleblower speaks out after years in hiding. Minister's cousin implicated in Nairobi cover-up. Tariq's face was blurred in the photos. But Kareem knew. His empire was about to fall. But just when Kareem thought the worst was over, his security system sent a breach alert. Motion detected. Front perimeter. 3:14 a.m. He opened the feed. A black SUV parked across the street. A figure stepped out. Tall. Hooded. He walked up to the gate, looked straight into the camera, and held up a photo. It was Grace, burned around the edges. As the truth threatens to destroy powerful men, Kareem and Grace face a final confrontation that could cost them their safety, their futures, and possibly their lives. But when Amira does something no one expects, everything changes. Because sometimes, the smallest voice carries the greatest power. The image on the screen froze Kareem in place. A shadowed man, standing just outside his front gate, holding up a half-burnt photo of Grace. Not a threat. A warning. This wasn't a stranger making noise in the dark. This was a message. We know. And we're close. Kareem didn't sleep. He increased security, moved Grace and Amira to the safest part of the house, alerted the Ministry of Interior, installed panic buttons in every room. But fear settled in like a fog, because he realized something terrifying. He wasn't protecting Grace anymore. She was protecting them all. Meanwhile, the media storm exploded. Tariq's face, no longer blurred, was plastered across every news outlet. Al-Masri cousin tied to Nairobi child exploitation scandal. Whistleblower's testimony reopens global investigation. Powerful donors linked to elite child abuse network. Tariq denied everything, but the paper trail was undeniable. A ledger, bank transfers, emails, and most damning, Grace's testimony. She'd gone public reluctantly after Kareem's urging. Her face blurred, voice altered, but the world now knew her as the African nanny who took on the Gulf. But then, the threats intensified. More black vehicles circled the villa. One night, the gate lock was tampered with. The next, a package arrived with a note. You're not untouchable. Silence is still for sale. Kareem had had enough. He moved Grace and Amira to a secure villa outside the city. Changed routes. Hired former military escorts. He wasn't going to wait for an attack. But even in hiding, Amira was growing stronger. She spoke now. Not much, but enough. Simple things. Juice. Light. Grace. Safe. And one night, as Grace tucked her into bed, Amira looked up with big, searching eyes. Daddy. Safe too? Grace stared, stunned. It was the first time Amira had called Kareem Daddy. But just as peace started to return, a man was caught scaling the outer wall of the villa. He was subdued by Kareem's security before he could reach the inner gate. In his pocket, a silencer and an unregistered pistol. He refused to speak, but when interrogated, his phone revealed it all. He had been hired by a third party, and payment had come from an offshore account linked to Tariq Al-Masri. That was the final straw. Kareem went public. He sat down in a national interview, clean suit, no script, and told the truth. About Tariq, about the school, about Grace, about the little girl who had once been silent, and now whispered words that carried more weight than bullets. "We let fear protect the powerful," Kareem said. "But my daughter doesn't fear anymore. So why should I?" A week later, Tariq was arrested, charged with conspiracy to obstruct justice, aiding and abetting child exploitation, and attempted intimidation of a state witness. He'd tried to crush Grace. Instead, she became the flame that burned his empire down. 3 months later, Amira stood at the edge of a children's music recital in a quiet school courtyard. She wore a white dress with soft lavender trim. Her braids were neatly tied with ribbons. Grace sat in the audience, Kareem beside her. The music teacher knelt beside Amira. "Are you ready?" she asked. Amira nodded slowly. She turned toward the crowd, spotted Grace, then Kareem, then looked up at the sky, as if someone else was watching too. She took a breath and sang, not perfectly, not loud, but clearly, a single line from the lullaby Grace always hummed. And in that moment, the entire courtyard went silent, because this wasn't just a voice, it was a rebirth. She came into their home as a nanny with secrets, but became the voice they never knew they needed. She was running from grief, from betrayal, from a past full of pain. But what she found in that little girl was forgiveness and purpose. She didn't just teach Amira to speak. She taught her to be fearless. And in return, Amira gave her something no one else ever could. A second chance at being a mother. Life lesson. Sometimes, the people the world overlooks are the very ones who hold the power to change it. Never underestimate the healing in one quiet voice. And never forget, protection isn't about walls or wealth. It's about love that's willing to fight, even when it's afraid.